Apologies from
Julian Snowball and Suzanne Wells.
So you know who they are. We don't have a public forum. We do have an apology from Mayor Gowdy. Oh, and another apology from Mayor Gowdy. Thank you. So I have a mover to receive those, Robin and Terry. Thank you. So is there any items, welcome Martha, items not on the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, there is one which is a letter that the Chief Executive wrote to NEMA regarding the fence sirens, which I'll table. It only was sent yesterday, so I'll table that today.
Right. So we need a mover for that?
Is it just, are you just wanting to table it to, well, the committee to receive?
Just for information.
For information. Well, we can do that. We can move it just to receive it.
Right, so I move that we receive it and Robin's seconding it. Thank you very much. Conflicts of interest, I doubt if there's any. And then we go on to the minutes of the last meeting. First of all, is there any issues of accuracy? Yes, Martin.
I'm not sure what page it is, but at some point it says that we thought that Gary did a fatalistic job.
Sorry, good on the spell check. I mean that. So.
It was deliberate.
It was deliberate because it was during COVID period.
That's just me trying to prove that I've read the book.
Thank you.
Yeah. So with that correction,
It's on page 4.
are they true record of proceedings? Have I got a mover for that? Yes, Robin, and a seconder, Terry.
Yes, happy to second it.
Cool. Is there anything on those minutes that isn't covered on the rest of the agenda that anyone wants to bring up? No? Perfect. So then we go on to the man at Gary's report, and this is Gary and Helen, as well as a Virgil, are going to do some presentations for us, and Pam, I think you're going to be Pam, but Pam's online too. Does any of that make sense? I feel like, yeah.
What we're going to add to is, as we go through the work program, once we've gone through the work program, we'll just briefly highlight some of the key points that each of us are doing, just to expand on them. So,
Thanks, Gary.
so my report, it's been, since we last convened, it's been rather busy, of course, with COVID winding down. On the 22nd of May, then on the 29th of May, we had the first of our 4 storms, which knocked us around a bit. And the thing about these weather events, of course, they come and go, but they take us often 2 days to get ready and probably 10 days to recover. So as soon as we got over one and got sorted, another one came. So, but our roading contractors and our new protocols that we've established, that I'm going to talk about shortly, are certainly making it a lot easier, a lot more efficient for us. So going down to the discussion, we've got NEMA claims, so Helen's done a very good job here, and so we've got $244,000 in claims. That money's been approved and is on its way somewhere. We were working with the government anyway.
But being approved is the important bit, so well done. Yeah.
It's all been through. And right at the very bottom of the COVID-19 section, the whole exercise cost us $7,200 for the 6 weeks. So given the fact that we all had to be fed and watered and looked after, and we got licences, and we had a lot of costs. So each of the councils bore that weight, which was good. The living device, the Business Advantage are undertaking that. They're well underway. They're into week 4, and they've got probably another 4 to 6 weeks to go in terms of their contract. And we may or may not have an update on that next week. but they are progressing well. They're quite good to work with because they are very, fresh eyes, and they're giving them quite a fresh look and asking questions that we would have thought they would ask. So that's good, but I'm just ABCing about the business case. Over the page, the disconnection of the tsunami warning sirens. So, I see you received a letter from the KEG executive group chair, Lady Camus, on the 31st of July, advising that FENS intended to disconnect our sirens. So these are the pages, so it's the paging system that we have on our phones. So it's Helen, myself and Julian are the only ones that can activate the sirens. And so there are 20 sirens on the peninsula that are FENS sirens that we are connected to with our paging system. The remaining sirens, of course, are ours. We own them. The community and council bought them years ago and we now look after them. So FENS want to disconnect them, and they're saying that the risk, as what occurred in Bay of Plenty, and when they actually got set off last year, is the reason, is the catalyst for them doing that. And so they wrote a letter saying we want to disconnect by the end of the year. And the CE has responded yesterday by saying if you do want to do that, we'll probably put an injunction on you because you're putting people's health and safety at risk. And what he said is that we want up to 24 months to get ourselves organised. We've got a plan, we're working on it, and here is our plan. He's outlined in the letter. The plan is the IAD device, rural connectivity, trust, more cell phone coverage and things like that. So that's where that letter's gone. We probably won't get a quick response because the letter that was addressed to Sarah Black, who's the Chief of Civil Defence, she's pretty busy with COVID at the moment. So that's for that. The disconnection of the sirens was always on the cards, and we've been probably anticipating that it's going to be coming because they are ineffective. They cover less than 40% of the network. They're expensive to maintain, and we'd be happy to get rid of them, but we must replace them with something to provide that safety net for people.
Right. So plan B, if they decide to keep going on their time frame, our injunction doesn't work, what is there another plan C or D or?
Yeah, the thing is, FENS are keen to work with us, so it's not an us or them or anything like that. It's that we will have a working relationship with FENS. We've had a good one for years and years and years, and that's not going to change. So they've just put a marker out,
yeah,
and it's been supported by NEMA, who says, we don't need sirens anymore, and we're saying, yeah, fine, let's work together and get it done. So I think an injunction of any sort would be a last resort.
yeah.
I don't think this council wants to go down that path.
No.
We just, through our legal team, we sort of thought, well, that was an appropriate statement to make.
So, thank you, and perhaps could the members of the committee just get an electronic copy of this so that they're read it?
And then finally, accurate forecasting. So if you recall, I think I've written in here, 20 September last year, we had a big storm up in Kootinga, which wiped out the village and isolated community. And for us, logistically, it was a month of really intense work trying to help that community on both sides of the river, vehicles and everything else. And what transpired with us, of course, was they were told we're only going to get like 250 million, we got something like 470 or something. So it prompted us to go back to Waikato Regional Council Ministers and say, you're not helping us at all. Because if we know that we're getting, like yesterday, we knew we were getting less than 100 mils, we don't respond, we take it forward, and Helen and I know that it's BAE for us and we don't worry about it. But if we get 400, we have got staff, everybody's got to activate community response, it's a totally different ballgame. And so we went down there and sort of complained about it. As a result of that, we've got a new protocol which is very, very effective now in terms of the last 4 storms we've had. We activate so we actually fully activate into a non-declared situation. And then I task back the responsibility of forecasting and the collaboration team to WRC. They then get the 20 or 30 people involved that they need to, all their flood people and all their contractors and that, and they join in. So they run that side of it, and then also coming alongside are the severe weather forecasting team from Wellington. And they join in, and what they do is when we are working together, they put up on the screen exactly what they're looking at. So we're getting a really good science understanding of what they are saying and what's going to happen. And they show us the models, and sometimes we're looking at 3 totally different models, and they're saying, which one do you want? It is that difficult, and the Coromandel is probably one of the hardest places in New Zealand to forecast, because you've got a land mass up north, and you've got water, and then you've got a land mass, and of course you've got steep hills, which create convection. So it's worked really, really well for us the last 4 times. It's made our life a lot easier, a lot more professional in terms of how we like and plan preparing. And so we're just developing that now with them. There's been a pushback from WRC because it's taken a lot of their resources, but it's allowing us to get on with our job as well. So it's really good. And that is my report. Got the work program next on the agenda, I think. So.
Any questions of Gary? Anything you want to add to that before we go on the work plan, Terry?
There was a good summary. I was always interested about how Regional Council was working their flood broadcasting versus ours. So it sounds like you've got connections there now, Gary. It sounds good. Yeah. Okay. All good. Thank you.
Any other? So let's go on to the work program, and that's there as an attachment. I'm sure my eyes are getting worse.
So what we will do with the work program, as you said, the only thing that is red,
Yes.
and that's the only thing I need to talk about because everything else is operating really well, is the sirens.
Yes.
And so therefore we made that red because it's a situation that's not in our control. I'll explain that. The rest of the work program is trucking along quite nicely. We've got a couple of not quite working on this one. Your screen, yes. Martin to
Look at the yellows.
the other
2 fingers.
So the business continuity plans.
Yeah.
So thanks, Tom. So the business continuity plans, they need a lot of work. It's a matter of getting really good time to actually sit down with this department and function heads to get it sorted. They're just tweaks, but we just need to keep on track. And a couple of things were exposed during COVID where BCPs were required and left a couple of gaps, but also a lot of staff are not fully familiar with this, so we've got to work in that space as well.
I think it feels really important to me. I realise how stretched people are, but with COVID being an obvious moving piece for the next couple of years at least, that and our propensity to have, weather events, the business has to be prepared just like, telecom or anyone else. So anything we can do to support that has been important within the units. I'll certainly do that around the council table when I'm reporting back on this meeting.
They are, the business plans, the business continuity plans work really, really, really well. And as a result of that, we spoke about this in leadership team the other day, the fact that we had to go back into another level, it was seamless. So the way that the leadership team and Rob structured the whole thing through the business continuity and our pandemic planning has worked a treat. But we just need to keep working at it and keep updating it and that sort of thing. The crisis management team, so this is just forward. We just need to spend a bit more time embedding it in functional within departments. There's a bit of resistance from some senior managers to why do we need it when actually they do need it. So it's just a bit of work. It's a new concept and we're just need the leadership team to sort of help us a little bit there.
Yeah, we just need it. It's through the chair. It's always that that balance about operational matters that can be managed versus things when they tip over into we actually need to get the CMT involved.
Yeah.
You know, set that up early because once you're into the middle of it, then it's like, oh, quickly set up in the middle. That doesn't really work. So you've got to. It's about a judgment call, making that call. We've had a couple of instances which Gary and I are in agreement that it probably wasn't the right call made by the people involved at that stage, and so we've just got to do a bit of work on that, like Gary says, and actually get that embedded and crystallised a little bit better as to when we actually set it up and get it going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for people to see it as a support
It's
rather than
Yeah.
as a,
You're not doing
we're
your
going to
job.
help you out because you're not managing,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
more brains the better.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah,
You
so
don't know what's around the corner, so it's like,
yeah,
well, it's all great at the moment, but let's just think about possible things that could happen, like later on today or tomorrow, and based on what those possibilities could be, let's set it up now. It's that kind of, so, yeah.
Yeah, it's, we've got a workshop coming up in September with the majority of Bruce's team to go through what the CMT actually will do, and we'll highlight examples and those sorts of things, but it's certainly that.
Yeah, the challenge is it's Gary and I, it's kind of easy for us, and we've worked together for a long time, and you know what I mean? We think similar, and you know what I mean? But for the teams, down the layer, it's trying to build that as well within those things, yeah.
so it's a good project though, if you're looking at culture as a whole and working together and supporting in those values, well then something practical like this is a really good way to embed that, so it's really good.
Because it is a lot about culture, actually. It's about the culture of the organisation, and then as long as you're connected into the culture of the organisation and you understand it, that helps you make the right judgment calls.
Yeah.
If you're not, if you just walk in like today into the organisation, you're not going to know how to make the right judgment calls.
Yep.
You know when to set things up, when to ask for help, when to expand. So you've got to have that good understanding of culture, and then that enables you to make good judgment calls. So, so very good point about culture.
Yeah.
And the only other issue that we are grappling with is the recovery manager. So at the moment it's Ken Connell, and Ken's indicated that he probably might wish to continue past this year. He's given us an extra year, but it's also it's a regional issue. It's not just facing us. And one council has recently appointed an emergency management manager / recovery manager. So there's some thinking around that we need to get our heads on.
What does the recovery manager, what's their job description?
So legally, in a short form, legally, when the controller's job is done, when the emergency is over, the recovery manager theoretically takes over. And the controller stands back as recovery manager. And they can spend like in Christchurch 10 years as recovery manager.
Yeah.
Well, the controller's gone. So that in a nutshell is what it is. But what happens is if we do have a major emergency, the recovery manager is there right at the start, seeing what's developing, seeing what's unfolding. So for COVID, for example, recovery is about economic recovery, not structural housing, that sort of thing. So it's a different piece. So we've got a little work to do in that space. At the moment we're okay because we've got a group recovery manager who's the ex-controller here, Gary Torvald, so he's very familiar with us. So I know that he would help us out if we got stuck.
Yeah.
But apart from that, everything else is going well. But what I will do now is we'll just expand on a couple of items in the work program while Helen and Paul are there. So we'll just go through some of the items on training, which is very, very important.
Cool. Is there any questions or comments on what Gary said? Everyone's been very quiet. Everyone's happy in their quietness? Yes? Good. Thanks, Helen.
You can see me right if I present from here, Terry. I think if I stand up the front, I'll be...
Yeah, no, go for it.
No, see what she said to do. Can you see that screen there, Terry?
Yes, I can, thanks, yes.
Cool. So just to preface this, I just wanted to talk about the National Disaster Resilience Strategy. And in your packs, I've given you a 2-pager from that strategy. And what this is what was McDem, but now NEMA's, basically their 10-year plan. And it's all about their vision and long-term goals. It was adopted in April 2019, and it's what they want to achieve over the next 10 years. Now, part of this, the language shifts. So the previous strategy talked about the 4 R's, risk, the 4 R's on your acronyms, number 1. And this strategy is a lot more about resilient communities. So managing risk and resilient communities. And I find this strategy exciting because they actually engage with our civil defence professionals in writing it. So I went to at least 2 workshops in the development of this. And particularly exciting was the other page of the strategy, there's a page in here talking about communities in Hapu. And there were some very loud voices from the locals around that consultation around how important it was for community response planning. And pretty much this page is, we've had a voice into it. So we own the strategy and we work towards it. And you'll notice in the work plan that these key vision and goals come through in that work program, and you'll see it in here. So when we talk about what we're working towards, like our training, it's working towards this vision and goals of a long-term strategy for emergency management. And it is more about this building resilient communities. And one of the key things about objective number 2 is effective response and recovery is training. And our training is not just for council staff, we also train our partner agencies. So we involve and engage particularly fire, hospital, Department of Conservation. Currently I'm doing a training plan for Ministry of Social Development staff, and we're also working with Higgins, who are the NZTA contractors. So we don't just deliver training to council staff, we deliver it right across the board to any of our partner agencies, including councillors. If any of you are interested, or there's online information we can give you, and there's also courses you're most welcome to attend. So the training pathways I've put up here, we've got, you'll see on the side there, the controller and recovery manager. They're like a 2-year, Gary, wasn't it? 2 year for the controller to train. Recovery manager is about the same, but it's looking even longer now because it's a whole program you go through. Alongside that is what the courses that we've got that are national courses we train for our coordination centre staff. So foundation, that's about a 2-hour online version or a 4-hour face-to-face. This council has an induction and a compulsory course for all new staff so that they understand that civil defence is actually council's responsibility and part of our job description. Then there are certain staff that we pull in for our emergency operating centre team, and then they follow on that blue pathway there, the intermediate and function specific training. Next to that is the incident control pathway, which is more our emergency services. We still coordinate and help our fire, police, St John, hospital staff onto those courses, but we don't run them locally, they run Hamilton. And then what's really exciting is that pathway across to the right there. In the brown box now is something we're currently working on, and that is for our volunteers, our community response teams, but also training up. Our goal is to have civil defence, our civil defence centres, which is like an evacuation centre in a response. Our goal is to have 1 staff member and 1 community member trained as a supervisor for each of our larger communities. And the problem with community people is it often changes, so and even our council staff. So this helps keep people engaged, and it's an easier pathway to train more people. So the Takutu online volunteer modules, what we're building is, and it will be Waikato consistent at this stage, but it will be picked up nationally because most stuff we do is that there's a number of modules. So if we get community volunteers, we've got a pathway with very little engagement from us that keeps them involved and engaged. So that's happening at the moment, and we have acknowledged that we've got a gap for our door knockers. And after an event, we send teams out to go knock around the communities, and that's that community outreach course. what we're doing as a prerequisite for these courses is people do all those volunteer modules first, and it means we can get more people through in a half day. So those are the pathways, the next is our training plan, which there is a summary of it, of what our objectives are for now. And this plan, I think we might end up changing a little bit next year, because at this stage it's about identifying our staff and making sure we've got the structure. And then the next stage will be, let's train them and see how effective our training is. So at this stage, we're still looking at, we really need to get our structure in place. Since 2019, when the Thames Valley model was disestablished, each council now has to come up with enough staff to run its own emergency operating centre. So we've got a goal still to undertake a gap analysis and identify staff for one shift. So that's one shift of running a reasonable size event, which would be a minimum of 16 staff. We really have to get good trained function leads, and then you can pull untrained staff to come and help them, but you do need trained function leads. So we've still got a couple of gaps that we're working with HR now as well to bring through. COVID was good for us in that we had different staff available than normally we would pull upon for our response. So we've got some new staff coming through, which is exciting.
Cool.
So our goal is for 30th September to identify one shift, but quite a huge target is then to be able to have 2 shifts identified by December. So it's on this, the orange is not yet started or minor issues, but remains on track. So this is on track, but we're still working through our gap analysis. We've still got gaps. The next one is a goal of having 90% of staff completing foundation training, which we're sitting at 92%. That is also going back, and staff that started 12 years ago that haven't undertaken the training is pulling them on board as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just the new starts. And we've just started a new way of doing this, rather than expecting them to turn up for a 4-hour face-to-face session. We're running a half-hour induction and then giving them the link to go away and do the whole training online, which you can do in your own time. You can do it in modules, you can do it 10 minutes at a time. So that's working successfully. And that means that everybody understands a little bit about civil defence. And then we have our intermediate training, which is the 2-day training. We want 40 staff within council who are having that training. That includes all the customer service staff, because in an event they become our call centre. So we're sitting at 97%, but in saying that, that isn't necessarily the staff we need as our function leads in our emergency operating centre, because our customer service staff boost those numbers. And then the other goal is that once we've got staff trained, we want to make sure that those that are identified as part of the team undertake. Originally it was an exercise every year, but we have so many activations that we're now considering those exercises. So the idea is when we activate, we try and pull in different staff. We have some key staff for key roles, and we try and pull in some of the other different staff to just use that as a refresher or activation. So that's just at 22%, but that's because that measure started 1 July, and 22% is indicative of the staff we've put through the 4 activations we've had since 30th of June. So busy times in the training.
What's your overall sense of engagement? Are people interested? Like, people are busy. Do they see it as part of their role? They've been part of this organisation, or is it a nip-on, tip-on that's a bit annoying?
I think staff themselves are very interested, quite engaged. You know, there's a section of staff very interested and quite engaged, but some of the staff, when it comes to a response situation, their role that they undertake business as usual for council means that they're critical staff and they can't jump over.
Yes. And
the leadership team are incredibly supportive and engaged, but in the middle there's sometimes there is team leaders who want certain projects completed or something.
Yeah.
And particularly at the moment with COVID, we're asking for staff to be on standby for a 40-hour week. We don't want staff for half a day or 1 day, which is our normal storm response. We're actually wanting to
lift them out.
Lift them out of their BAU potentially for weeks on end, which is what we did before. So that's the part that's interesting at the moment, because we're working with, right, at level 3, rather than looking at who are our trained staff, we're looking at what staff will find it difficult to get remotely or not have a role. So our focus at the moment is the pool staff, because the pool will close and there's only a limited amount that they can do. So in terms of engagement from the leadership team, from the council, yeah, we're positive engagement response. Just really bad timing with long-term plan at the moment, because everybody is really heavily engaged in that. So some of our key staff that we would like to have on the runway list, you say, can I pull you up for 40 hours? It's really difficult. So we're just having to think sideways around that. We'll get there. Any other?
We'll get through that. Helen's given a good summary of that, because it is challenging. The leadership team are very supportive, and in general, managers are supportive. But there is that kind of, like everything, it's a balance, you know. And the COVID thing is difficult because it's so extended. It's not like you pull them out for 2 or 3 days and they get back to their BAU. And so there is that balance where, you know, managers want to hang on to their good staff, but the EFC need good staff as well. You know what I mean? And the familiarity with that environment is very important. So it is a balance, you know, but you often get that, you know, we're humans, and as general humans, we like to do things that we enjoy, you know what I mean? And so if staff really enjoy the EFC and they've got this big stack of boring BAU, they're like, yeah, I'll go on the EFC, you know, and then suddenly the boring BAU. So it's just about a balance, you know. It's like that thing where you've got to study for exams and suddenly the most important thing is tidy your bedroom. You know? Thing you've never done for 6 months is now something the most important thing. So it's just a balance between that, but totally understanding that Gary and Helen need the people that are familiar. They know how they work well with the team, you know what I mean? So it's just about management. So, and I think, you know, overall, I think we're doing a pretty good job.
When the closure teams, are they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think as a governance level, we have to understand that as well, that tension between business as usual, you know, and like this council got its annual plan done pre-June the 30th and others didn't. And I'm not saying that's bad, because some of them have much bigger issues than us to deal with, but it's just getting that balance. Yeah, especially in COVID, Martin.
Just a question through the chair. The brown box on the training pathways for volunteers, so is that just certain volunteer organisations around the peninsula, or how many are we talking?
Oh, I just want to explain that. When it says volunteers, we're calling it volunteer pathway, but it's not necessarily, it's not like volunteers from nowhere or volunteer organisations. It's because we're co-developing it with Nick Watson and Roy Payhu, and he's got a response team who are fully volunteers. The target audience for that, for me, are our community response groups, the key people in our community response groups, but also it can be opened up to, for instance, we would put Ministry of Social Development, when we're putting together their training plan, we would offer them all those. So volunteers is probably a misnomer for that box. I think it's more that these are the online civil defence modules that we'll deliver.
So, for example, the women in Te Puru, would they fit into that?
Absolutely. Yes, they're part of that community response group module. And then we try and, once people have done that, then you offer, you know, is there someone that is interested in training further to be either part of an outreach team or that civil defence supervisor, or these modules we already have 1 or 2 staff who are community members that volunteer in an emergency operating centre. So it's part of keeping people that says I want to do something engaged, because otherwise it takes staff time to keep them.
Just as a tangent, and for community, you know, I'm just thinking about the community hero awards, volunteer awards. We should be talking to Helen about whether there's any that stand out and for us, the Thames-Coromandel area, for acknowledgement, which would be another way of advertising the work, because I don't personally think, I probably do know them, but you know, those Te Puru people and stuff, so we could potentially link with you about that.
Got some names for you already, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Any questions from you about the training, Terry, or comments?
That all sounds very interesting. The psychosocial treatment, what's that?
Psychosocial first aid is about acknowledging that sometimes it's more than physical needs in an event, and understanding when you are dealing with people who've just lost their house or been flooded out of their home and they're on the other end of the phone, it's having a little bit more understanding of the, that psychological impact and how you can, understanding it, and some tools about how you can address their stress and your stress when you're dealing with that situation.
All right, so you're providing that support. Is that part of the training, is it?
The training is just a quick overview and understanding that that is actually part of, when you are particularly call centre or doing a door knock to somebody affected, that it isn't actually about filling in the form, it's listening to their story.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I've got Pam's presentation. Are you in the background there, Pam, to add in if there's anything I don't cover?
Yes, I am listening. Thank you for doing this for me, Helen.
So this is Pam's update on community response planning and public education initiatives, and that's why I wanted to show the resilience strategy, because we're talking about the 10-year plan for National Emergency Management Agency, and we're, I think, well ahead of the game on this. And the work that Pam's done in our community response planning that we've been doing actually for a number of years, really, we're probably leading the country in this space. Now, that's a reflection on really our geography and the fact that our communities are often isolated and left to their own devices through events. They self-respond and look after themselves, but it's the connection between their self-response and us understanding what they're doing and building those relationships so that we can talk to each other, support each other in that. And you'll see that that's the whole key objective of number 3 is about enabling and empowering and supporting community resilience. On the other side, within the resilience strategy, they've got communities in Hapu, and they've listed there that what we can do in 10 years as communities that we need to think about, and most of these are what's already embedded into that community response planning process. So in terms of community response plans, there's 28 identified communities. Of those, that one shown there in green, both on the map and in the table, are ones we've got established and active plans. The orange are the ones that are in progress, because part of the community response planning process is we can't say we want it finished by this date, because it's a process that the communities own, not us. We facilitate them developing their plans. So we can initiate the conversations, but the plan itself and the planning process will only work if the communities are fully engaged and they do it themselves. Otherwise, we'll end up with a plan that we've written, but when it comes to putting into place, the people themselves in the community need to be told what to do. So our plans are, the fact that we've got that many green is awesome. Well done, Pam. And the 2 in red are identified for development but not yet commenced. They're going to be a slightly different plan because they're a slightly different community. In Thames, and we've just split it to Thames and Kopu, we already have welfare agencies mandated to do this work, funded and mandated. So rather than having a community group that's going to stand up and look after others in their community, with the Thames and Kopu communities, we're looking at the business associations and the welfare agencies, pulling them together as a lead and developing instead like a welfare response team. So working with Shell Centre here, who's MS Ministry of Social Development, and we'll progress that. It's sitting there as red because they're otherwise engaged at the moment with COVID, both Ministry of Social Development and some of the agencies that we want to shoulder as well. So we've if something happened tomorrow and we had to activate a civil defence centre, we've got trained staff who can do so, and we've got agencies that would support us and be pulled in. So it's also, in some ways, a lower risk.
I've got a question if I can.
Yes, Terry, sorry.
You go for it, Terry.
All right. So this is one of the key areas that I find really important, is that how do we address those who are challenged to move or difficult to get away from an emergency? Is this part of a plan to try and find out where those people are and find some sort of transport system to move people? Is that part of this, what you're trying to do?
Do you want to answer that, Pam?
Are you talking about people who are distressed or isolated or vulnerable people in the community?
Yeah, vulnerable people. We had quite a while ago a tsunami warning, and people gathered up around our place up here, but half the people have said, well, my neighbour's really, not very well, and no one's picked her up. And somebody said, what
Yes.
about Joan, and all that stuff. Yeah, so that's the kind of understanding.
So just to give you a quick rundown, in the last maybe year or probably year, I've initiated a community survey letter. So the community response group, I have a template of a letter that we send out to every member in the community, especially the smaller communities, because it's a lot more achievable. Whereas in the larger communities, we do have emergency services who can go out and help the vulnerable. But the letter basically says, this group exists, this is what we're doing. There's a little questionnaire. It involves things like, do you need assistance? Can you offer assistance? What resources do you have? Are you medically trained? We explain to them that we keep this private information secure. The community response group then has this information on hand if there is an emergency, and they know that they've got 3 very vulnerable people in the community. They know that there's somebody who's reliant on power. Saying that, we've never had 100% response of the community coming back. Sorry, I'm reading Lorna's message here while I'm trying to talk. So we do know that where the vulnerable people are and where, if people need help, but they have to respond to the survey letter. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you've got a very proactive approach to it, and I think that's what we're trying to gather. Like I say, you won't get 100% most probably, but the smaller communities really need that kind of support for sure. So
and they have that, and it is a new initiative, and it is working really well. And again, for those older plans that I have, we still need to roll out this community survey, but it's slow work. Some communities jump on board and we get it done really fast. Other communities, I have to sit and wait and push and wait, but yeah, it's good work.
Thank you.
So the 4 quarters of the work in the work plan here is when we're going to be revisiting each of those plans, we being Pam. But sometimes it doesn't quite work that way. For instance, in quarter 4, Waimu, Peru. Sorry, which one's Pam? There's some in quarter 4 that have already approached you and are wanting a meeting to relook at their plans.
Yes, so I've had to sort of work my way around the peninsula, but it doesn't always go according to plan. I've pretty much already done my quarter 1 work. Things are in progress or ticking along. But Waiomu, Tapu Te Mata, Waikawau and Kirita want to progress their plans now. And it's all because of COVID and there's urgency. And so I'm going to try and squash in a lot of work in quarter 1. I might have to move things around a bit, but the plan is to visit all these community groups, update their plans or progress their plans. But yeah, quarter 1's very, very busy.
So part of this community response planning is actually being responsive to what the communities want. We try and find a champion in each community, and if people are keen and wanting to progress, we really need to support that and encourage
exactly.
it.
So it's no use saying, well, we'll come back to you early next year, because then, yeah.
So it's a movable feast, the quarters, but the work's being done. And the other key target is our public education initiatives. And the first one here is a tsunami signage project. This is a new project. And it's to ensure communities have tsunami signage consistent with the NEMA, National Emergency Management Agency, tsunami signage guidelines, which is the route sign, the safe zone sign, and the information boards. So the first part of this project is to do an audit of what's actually already in the communities. We've had emergency response groups in a lot of our communities that have been going back to One White Star, you know, a long time. And so some of those communities have already got the first two, the tsunami route sign and the safe zone sign. So we're currently doing an audit of what's out there. This project is run alongside the community response planning, is revisiting each of those groups at least once a year. So part of that revisit is looking at getting the group to own the signage as well. So they're helping us with the signage project. Another initiative is TCDC requirement now for all new coastal subdivisions. Part of the subdivision requirement is that they have the signage. So we're incorporating it into our council business.
Another question, if I can.
Yes.
So the signage is really important, and obviously you could go around. What we're discussing at the moment and concerned about is how much signage goes where when you're confusing it with regional council and DOC and iwi and TCDC. Is there some common approach to this, so the signage boards are put out there in a way that they are able to be read and understood, but still not look like a whole lot of jargon that people just walk past?
Yes, I don't know, it's human nature, I think. I know that these signs exist in Whangamata, but because I drive past them every day, I really don't pay attention to them anymore. And that's just human nature. There is guidelines, directors' guidelines on the signage, how big they need to be, what they need to display, but they don't really give you any indication of where they need to be displayed. I am just using common sense by putting them in main intersections, entrance to towns, all the main roads. They won't be on every road. They will. They have to be scattered in. But again, I can make them bigger. I can't change the colours. It's just people do get used to signs if you put them up, and they do tend to just blend in with the surroundings.
Yeah, I think it's about the whole scenario of signs needs to be discussed to make sure that they work better than what they are at the moment. It's very messy, and it's been raised several times, and I just wonder if there is a structure within the TCDC to be able to manage these in a better way. So great what you're doing. Maybe the information boards is the key one I'm trying to discuss at the moment. The other ones you'll find the right spots for, but as long
the
as
information board is a new concept. I'm just starting to get some quotes and ideas of the material to use, because they have to be placed on main entrances to beaches. And I don't want to give too little information. I don't want to give too much information. But along with anything you put out in the public domain, you need to, when you put it out there, you have to do education around it. You need to make people aware that it is there. You need to make them aware of what it means. So this is just the beginning of making sure they're out there. Alongside this comes the promoting it and making sure people understand what it means.
Lorna's online and wants to add something.
Just from a comms perspective through the chair, we have been working with Pam, and as Pam said, this is the start of the project, and absolutely, Terry, that's something that we will take on board, is that if there are existing signs, particularly I know there are big sort of information boards that we manage where the signs that can be included in, and also working with and the tourism kind of tying that all in.
Thanks, Lorna.
So the other public education initiatives are the quarterly school newsletter inserts. So that's for all schools across our peninsula. Pam puts together information that can put up to schools. It's up to that. We can't tell the schools they have to circulate it, but there seems to be reasonably good uptake in the past.
Hang on, Martin wants to.
I was at Penatoni School yesterday, and the office manager was putting a communication piece in the newsletter. It might have had the evacuation stuff as well, but I think it was also talking about the training by.
Right.
And she was quite happy to have it because she was like, oh, sometimes they have difficulty filling out newsletters.
Right, and Monetary School had something about the great shakeout this week and last week as well.
Yes. So it's, I think, same again, a minimal amount of work from one of our team to maximum coverage.
Yeah.
Promoting Shakeout 15th of October, and the other comms push at the moment is around the COVID Chasing It and the QR code promotions. So that's just the focus at the moment.
Just one thing about the community response plans. They were at such a stage of development that every time we have a foreseeable event coming, Pam we can select where the impact is going to be, and Pam gets all of those groups immediately. So straight away there's a very infiltrated response going into those communities, and of course they pass the message out. And it's so together with comms and everything else, it's another great communication channel that we have that's maturing nicely as plans get developed. So very, very pleased with it. It's coming on well.
I'll just follow on from that. There's two comments. One is through COVID, those community response groups, because we had that network, Pam was working with them and sending them an information basically update every week. But the other part of it is when we were from the call centre, if we had somebody in one of the communities and they, that's stuck at home, couldn't go out and do their shopping, we had the arms and legs to activate to do that. So exactly that happened at Kuatunu, to Puru. There was a number of communities that helped in that way. And the other thing is the first step we do when we're information gathering is phoning some of these contacts to find out what's happening around the peninsula in a weather event. So we're in a much better place than we were a few years ago.
Cool. Martin.
This is just for the chair. Is there a concern that, and I don't want to harp on about the west-east divide, but if you kind of look at that map, all the yellow ones, except for the ones up on the top there, are kind of up and down our west coast of the bird. Was that just around the timing, or we've got red, yellow?
The community response planning process, the focus initially was risk-based, and it started on the east coast.
Okay, right.
Okay, so I'm just going quickly on COVID-19. So what happened? So when we had the first response in March, it was a civil defence run event, and now this second tranche, the second alert level we're in, there's a new structure. So just briefly, as a result of all the decrease and everything else, they decided that civil defence alone was not the vehicle to do it. So they've set up a national and regional advisory group. And civil defence is embedded in that as we'll take action from this group as to what we want. And that's resulted in decrease. So what you'll see is the one that we have in the Waikato region is the Ministry of Social Development, the chair. You've got the CEs for the Health Board, South Waikato District Council, Waikato Regional Council and Waikato District Council. You have 2 from the PN's department and 5 from Kiwi, and our Kiwi rep is John Hammond from our Kiwi Trust Board. And so it's a high level governance, and then what happens out of that, they give some suggestions or directions to civil defence. Just on the IAD Business Case again, so there's where we're at. So we've got the business case has been undertaken. We're also looking at cellular expansion, fibre expansion, the disconnection of defence sirens, the retention of community sirens, what that means, and because they won't be disconnected at this stage. The community response, public education, and of course signage. So these are. So we'll have this risk assessment protocol available as soon as we can get it done.
Right, good.
Rural Connectivity Trust, just briefly on this, as you can see from, it's not that great, but they are rolling out quite progressively, slowly but positively, they're rolling out connections for the Coromandel. And so we'll put this out later on, but you can see that all the main communities have fibre or ASDL or ADSL. And so there is connectivity. It's the smaller communities that don't. And these are the ones that we have to work with. And so there's a good initiative there for the coming years to work with the Rural Connectivity Trust. This month, we have had our NEWA update for the year, and this has come 3 months earlier than normal. And normally gives us an update in October. But come to us, there's a 60% chance, which is very high, that we are going to be in La Nina, which means it's a ditto from what we had it's another summer of what we've just had. So it's going to be a wet spring, which will mean grass growth. It's going to be very dry, very hot, and the summer will have long leaves. It's at this time right in May. So the borders likely to be closed. We are waking up to say, man, like Coromandel could be busier than normal. With people, so planning is going to get underway. We are just getting ourselves organised, and I'm going to work in with the likes of the Bruce's team, the 3 Waters guys. We're going to start sitting and planning now is what happened last summer. Where did we struggle? You know, water's one of the issues. We're going to solid waste, how the collection, you know, how that is managed. Even like things like stormwater and the whole thing. We're going to work with Doc, Safer Coromandel, which I'll talk about in a second, staffing and our ability to manage stage capacity. So something, if, for example, the government come out and say, go and fill all water tanks, our ability to gang up and get that job done. And of course, some risk assessment, which we do every year for what we like. So just on Safer Coromandel, committee may recall that Safer Coromandel was alive and well a number of years ago, initiative by police, Graham Shields, and it was very, very effective. And it was picked up by Media Works, and together mainly with police and Media Works, they put out a lot of messaging regarding the topic of the day. So it could have been alcohol, it could have been drugs or fire or whatever. It faded away because police no longer wanted to own it. And this time last year, ACC and police came to sit with the Mayor and the CE regarding an initiative calling it Safer Communities, which is a national initiative, which was born out of this. And it wasn't accepted by the Mayor or the CE, it had fish hooks in it. So we've gone away, and now through the Eastern Waikato Emergency Services Committee, which is a committee that's carried on since the TDLA was shut down, which is all the emergency services, fire, police, airline, hospital, doctors, areas. We've been working with them, and last week they accepted Safer Coromandel into the committee as a governance structure. Media Works had come along at the same time and said we're going to put substantial 6-figure money into this. And so we've got an advertising campaign ready for summer. This use committee will give direction, and we have staff within TCDC that are going to be a conduit between Safer Coromandel and the use committee.
That sounds good.
It is really, really good, really pleased with it, because if you recall, the biggest number of deaths we had on the Coromandel for a number of years was men having heart attacks.
That's right, lifting their trailers and stuff like that when they're not used to it.
Skateboarding, mountain biking, wakeboarding.
Yeah, now if I on cycles and like that.
Yeah, that's right.
In the hot sun.
Yeah, and so what the message will be this year, I don't know. Obviously, climate's going to be an issue. What we did do last summer was we put a lot of energy into fire risk, and we were just messaging constantly. And I think we only had a couple of small fires. I think the message, the care message, probably, especially in meeting with violence in the house, there's a lot more cognizance from the communities. So.
I think everyone could see it was so dry as well. You know,
Yeah.
it was so obvious. Maybe that helps as well, you know, whereas when it doesn't feel that dry, it's like, fine, you know, and it's actually not fine, so.
But it's good that we've got a lot of work to do in this space, because we have a responsibility not only to fire guys and but we as a council have a responsibility to make sure that we get the message out and we work really closely with that concept and Safer Coromandel.
And water's going to be a big one, right?
It will be, and it's good that we know we're going to do that early planning.
Yeah.
I've got, not pinning our hopes on this, but hopefully we'll be in a slightly better situation this summer because, you know, we've had a reasonably wet kind of winter, whereas last winter and the winter before were both very dry winters. We had 2 dry winters on the run and dry summers as well, so we had a good couple of years of just dry weather, and we really saw that in the stream levels, like the most recent summer. So hopefully with a bit of, you know, definitely had a wet period this winter, hopefully that will help a little bit on the stream levels and bring things back up a bit. But having said that, you know, we'll never sit there and bank on that, you know, cross our fingers. So I think the work with Gary and my teams is critical. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, we can't be reactive with this, and it's going to.
No, well, Auckland learned the hard way, didn't they?
Sure did. And that's, I mean, this is also, we're going to bring our coastal science staff in as well. You know, it's, everybody's has to have a stake.
He's pretty busy at the moment. He's got 12, 14 sites around the district where over the last month or so they've had reasonable erosion. So he's only been on board a month, so he's been around. He's busy.
Right. I haven't seen him yet.
No, he's a young guy, very nice. Yeah. I'll bring him around and introduce him definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's the stuff. So what we'll do is every committee meeting will actually take us a topic here with our work program and just expand on it for you, just to give you that point of view.
That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you, all 3 of you. Do so much work and there's only 3 of you. I have to keep mentioning them. And a lot of other support people coming in, so I do acknowledge the work of everyone else as well. So I'll move that we receive that report. All those in favour? Second. Everyone's happy? Now, has anyone got anything, members' reports? Terry, anything you want to add to the meeting?
For members' reports?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just want to reiterate again the signage protocols. It's something that's really showing up, that we've got so much signage with environmental and social and dogs and vehicles and all the things. You don't want to lose the emergency signage amongst it all, and having that discussion before it's all stuck up so we can get some clarity around it. I think it's important. So just making that point.
Okay, cool. Point taken. Robin?
Oh, just almost to follow up on that, I like that the information boards that are going to put up are recognised in the format, because when I looked at that, the first thing I thought was, I've seen those before. I've seen one in Herbertville where it was on the side of the main hall of the main street next to the toilet, so everybody stops there, and so it's nice that it's going to be a nationally recognised, this is what I do thing. And really the only other thing I wanted to say is, well, you guys do a fantastic job, so thank you. It's nice to know that we're in safe hands and that you seem to have everything under control. It's great.
Martin? Nothing? I don't think there's anything I want to add. Yeah, I was just thinking when you were presenting, Helen, the work around community response teams, about, say, like in places in Thames, we also need that neighbourhood stuff, that the basics doesn't go away, that you're not going to be rescued by these highly trained people, that you need to know who your neighbour is and have a plan as a cul-de-sac or whatever as well. So there's somehow about encouraging that whole community neighbourhood stuff at the same time.
COVID actually went a little bit like that. COVID created a lot of empathy in communities.
Yeah.
Apart from gangs, you know, with Aucklanders and Hamiltonians coming up in patches, but the others, the residents and that did actually, they were quite supportive of each other, especially others.
So, well, thank you very much. So unless there's anything anyone else wants to add, thank you everybody, and I'll declare the meeting. Oh, mover and a second for the members' reports. Gary, Terry. Thank you. And thank you very much. Stay well, Terry. We'll see you next week, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to members and the reports. Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks, Doug.
And thanks, Bruce. It's really good to you